So we're live 5 minutes early. We won't start yet, but technically we're gathering the masses now, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was gonna try to add my own Twitter, but no. Oh well, that's gone. Oh yeah, see that's where it's got the wrong name. Yeah.
Okay, I got Twitter going. And we have our first guest. Hello,
Well,
Ashish.
yeah.
Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello.
Um, okay.
All right, yeah. Who knows, right? Oh no. Now people are appearing. Hello,
Whoa.
everyone.
Look at everyone
We
just
went
piling
live
in.
before. Well, by we, I mean me. I screwed up. I was in charge of this. Matthew didn't do nothing incorrect. I messed it up.
I'm innocent.
For now, right? I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you on this gotcha journalism. Get you to say something bad.
Ooh, okay.
Hold it against you for a long time. You know how it works.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. All right. Let me grab. I'm trying to pull this over where I can see. No. Computers are hard.
You could get me to say something like controversial, like dogs are better than cats, and my whole image would be shattered.
I know. Do you have a cat? Is that where this whole cat thing comes from?
It is. Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? I have a cat. His name is Tiggy Tigerson. You might be introduced to him at some point during the stream. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I figure so, and you guys all are hearing this because I went live too early, right? But the idea is Matthew and I are going to take questions for half an hour. So you guys can start throwing those into chat. We will start cherry picking the easy ones. So don't, if you ask a really hyper specific, complicated one that just pertains to you, we're probably not going to answer it. But you never know. But you know, the more the merrier and the better. So, but yeah, hopefully it looks like people look like LinkedIn is really what's driving the most people so far.
LinkedIn is a very good channel for connecting with folks on Power Apps. Yeah.
And Ronald, I would agree, dogs are better, right? Buddy is laying at my feet.
Do you wanna start up with just quick introductions of ourselves, and then I can
Yeah,
throw
I
you
guess we
a
just
softball question over the plate to get started?
I've got a softball question to throw at you to start. So
Ooh.
all
I
right,
like
well,
that.
yeah, what the heck, right? And this is where like when I edit it and post the recording, right? We'll kind of start, we won't leave all this portion in, but all right. So yeah, we'll start, right? So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Matthew and I, right? My mystery guest here. I did such a good job editing his photo. No one guessed it was him. False. But yeah. So I am Shane Young, right? I am a Power Platform person with Power Apps 911, right? I make lots of YouTube videos. I talk on Twitter's, the LinkedIn, all of that. And through all my social connections, I have made a friend. I think it's okay to call you a friend at this point. We had Chick-fil-A together, so I think that makes us friends. But so I've got Matthew with me here. Matthew, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hey folks, I'm Matt Devaney. I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. That's right, I'm Canadian, so I'm very polite. I'm very sorry to meet you. That's how we say hello in Canada. Just joking. I run a Power Apps blog, MatthewDevaney.com. You might have come across it in your travels there. It's very pink, and it has lots of cats on it, and it also has some fun facts about Power Apps. So thanks for having me here, Shane.
Oh, thank you for joining. Yeah, and I was surprised when I found out you're Canadian and your like head doesn't separate when you talk, right? Like I didn't know any Canadians before I saw South Park, so I just assumed that all Canadians kind of split in half.
Now, Shane, we've met in person before a couple times, right?
Yeah, more than once. Like I said, we had Chick-fil-A together, so that makes us like
Tasty.
soul people. We did have a hard time though, right? For me, it's a chicken sandwich. Matthew called it a chicken burger, and we were a little disconnected there.
Well, it does come between two hamburger buns, right? And there's a piece of chicken in there, so maybe that's just a Canadianism. Maybe.
Who knows? All right, so I promised you a softball question before we jump into the viewer questions. Right, they are already flying hot and heavy. There's already I want to start answering some of them. I'm hold on. So Monday, I put out a video, the top 5 data sources for Power Platform, and as expected, right, it kind of stirred up a lot of spirited debate around the topic. So my big question, though, right, I'm not going to ask you to judge my list. My big question here is, I realized in hindsight, thanks to all the comments, that I did not call out Dataverse for Teams as a data
Ooh.
source. And so there was debates, right? There's some people that think it should be number 2, right after full Dataverse. And there's some people like me who think it should be down at the bottom with Excel. Where does Matthew rate Dataverse for Teams as a data source for the Power Platform?
Shane, I thought this was supposed to be a softball question, not a spicy, controversial one.
Easy. You have an answer, right? Whether people like it or not, it's different, but you have an answer, right? So you don't have to think to answer it. I know.
I know. Okay, so the one thing I want to say right away is, even though I blog about SharePoint and Power Apps all the time, in my job and my day-to-day job, I do like 100% Dataverse development. And that might be a little bit of a surprise. And Shane, you probably don't do 100% of SharePoint development either,
No,
right?
80% of our apps are SharePoint, right?
Yeah,
Not Dataverse.
yeah. And so when I'm thinking about Dataverse versus Dataverse for Teams, since I'm so used to working in Dataverse, I'm like, why can't we just kind of go the full way, right? And there's like limits on Dataverse for Teams, like in how you can share things out. Like security is a really great thing about Dataverse. You can go down to you can start at the top, and you can have records by like owners and business units and organizations. It's really great for security. And then in Dataverse for Teams, you can only have a couple of options there, right? You have a 2 gigabyte limit on your Dataverse for Teams. It's a pain in the butt to manage those environments. And so I think once you get someone into Dataverse for Teams, the next natural question to ask is like, how do we upgrade and get to like the full capabilities of that? And why don't you just start from Dataverse at the start? Like, that's kind of my opinion on that, if that's where you're thinking of going. And it's harder to surface those apps too, right? Like, they have to stay in Teams. You can't just push them out to like a SharePoint site and have them access it from there, or like some other page, or I guess you can do it on your phone, but through the Power Apps, right? And so it just kind of puts you in a box a little bit, which I get it, right? It's free, right? You're not paying for those extra features. And that's just why I want to jump to Dataverse right away. So where would I actually put that? I would put it above Excel, but probably below the other options that you had, like Salesforce, SAP, yada, yada, that type of thing. I actually think SharePoint is better than Dataverse for Teams. Spicy take.
I had the same take. You did not know ahead of time, but that was my answer
No,
as well. I
not planned.
would put it in 5th, and then Excel in 6th, right? It's better than Excel, but it's not better than SharePoint. Yeah, and I think you called it out well, right? Like, it's interesting. Like, before it came out, I was like all like telling the team here, like look,
Yeah.
it's going to change everything. Everyone's going to move everything to Dataverse for Teams. Like, I thought it was going to be the bee's knees. But then we rolled out the first app on it, and it's like, oh, it doesn't do this. Oh, it doesn't do right. And very quickly we realized that like it was so close, but it just misses on 4 or 5 key things that for the most part makes it unusable in most of our scenarios. So
And there's some really cool things coming out in Dataverse soon that you're going to want to take full advantage of. Like, they just announced the new Dataverse for offline feature, and I don't know how that's going to play into Dataverse for Teams. That's going to be a big part of the story going forward that I think folks are going to want to take advantage for their mobile and tablet apps.
yeah. But it's really super cool to hear that you guys do everything on Dataverse. I had no idea that you were 100% Dataverse. That's pretty powerful.
100% Dataverse, pretty much.
All right, so we started getting. Oh, we've got 1,000 questions over there.
Oh my gosh, that's
you
a
know,
lot.
I would say you can start just kind of cherry picking the ones you want to see. Somebody asked, can one of us do a series on model-driven apps in Dataverse? I have a series on that. I don't know what happened, so you just missed it. It's already out there. And we have like full model-driven stuff as well. We got a free class, and there's plenty of model-driven stuff out there. So that was a good question. Someone else asked us to rank places to store files. So
Places to store files. Okay.
you want to take a hack of that one? You want me to start that one?
Yeah, let's start with a little bit of a brainstorm, right? Let's just kind of call it the places we could store files. I'll start with the first one. You could store them in OneDrive, right?
OneDrive. Well,
First one.
but so it's hard to connect to those though, right? Like storing files for your Power Apps, right? Power Apps can't really talk to files on OneDrive, so that'd be a tough one to use.
That's true, right? We're not talking about Power Automate here. That's correct,
Yeah.
right?
Um, so Azure Blob Storage, right? That's probably my favorite.
Very
It's
good.
it's the fastest. It's the most performance, right? But the downside, it makes your app premium.
It does. You've also got SharePoint in that case. Trusty old SharePoint. We keep on coming back to that. You could store things in a SharePoint document library or as attachments.
I honestly think that SharePoint document libraries is the second best data source for files, in my opinion.
Ooh, this is just your controversial week, Shane.
If we're not here to upset people, then what are we doing, Matthew? Right? And one of my big reasons for that, though, is that like SharePoint. I mean, it's good at storing files anyway, right? The infrastructure's there, but they're very accessible, right? You grab the URL to that file,
Mhm.
you can surface it in your app, or you can just ship people off the URL, and then they're using the edit, with Word, Excel stuff in the browser. Like they can have a complete experience
Mhm.
pretty quick with files stored out there. Like for example, if you store Azure Blob Storage, you can't have that interactive experience to go with
No,
just
you
the raw
can't.
storage.
But there are some unique things about SharePoint document libraries that do make them attractive. For one, the versioning and version control of that, the ability to have a complete history of your document and go back to any time and see what changes people have made. And that might be valuable in some cases and more valuable than the speed and performance that is given to you by the Azure Blob Storage itself. Do you tend to store things as attachment, Shane, as a SharePoint list item, or do you tend to gravitate towards SharePoint document libraries as your default data storage place in SharePoint lists?
Wow, we are staying with hot takes. I I have hated attachments since 2003 when I started with
Yes.
SharePoint. So I refuse to put attachments. Yes, I put them in a document library and grab the link, grab the key, grab some way to, put this stuff back in like a parent-child relationship, but I will not ever condone using the attachments
No,
functionality of
no.
SharePoint.
Now you've done at least one video about that, right? I think.
Yeah, I definitely have talked about it. And
Yeah.
I did a video as well on like how to
People want to
work with
know.
attachments in Power Automate because a lot of people want to do it, but
Yep.
it makes my heart hurt when people do it. So
That is one of the things I've stayed away from and intentionally not blogged on my blog because I just don't want to teach people how to do it, I guess, because of my own preferences. So, but who knows? If there's enough demand, maybe I change that in the future. Is there another place that we can store documents other than Azure Blob Storage or SharePoint? Those are the two main ones, I think. You
those
could
are
store
the
in
two.
Dataverse files there too.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess let's talk about places not to store files, right? And someone just said this is not pushing into YouTube right now. I don't know why it's not live in YouTube.
Oh,
Sorry, I got distracted when they told me that wasn't happening. Um,
it's okay. Yeah, take a moment, figure it out.
no, we will not let it distract if it doesn't work, but it says view on YouTube. No, it's showing. Did it just do a different link?
I don't know. I think
Okay,
on
it's
YouTube
definitely
it's waiting for Shane Young. Yeah.
yeah. So the link I put out didn't show up, but it is. All right, it's live now. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Well, sorry about that. I don't know what the heck that was all about. Um. Okay. So sorry. So let's talk about the data source not to store files in, and that is SQL Server.
What
No,
are we doing with our hands? Yeah. Are we?
I don't know. All right. I get very upset about that one. Right. Like, I've seen people. There's ways to like take the base 64, shove them in files, or use a file column inside a SQL table. And there is no worse performance. There is no worse outcome that you can set yourself up for than storing files directly in SQL Server. So don't do that.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't
Now
know. That's one.
you can do anything in Power Apps and Power Automate if you try hard. But the question is always, should you do it? And is this data actually going to be easy to surface in other places? If you have to rebuild that from the data URI or the base 64, it tends to be a bit of a pain.
I see in the chat someone talking about many-to-many relationships. Do you do much with many-to-many relationships?
Ooh, yeah, only in Dataverse. Yeah. Um, so in Dataverse, there's this concept of a many-to-many relationship, and I'm not sure if the user is talking about SharePoint-based apps or Dataverse-based apps. But the concept is that, hey, on the one side, let's do a concrete example, right? I have a bunch of courses. Let's say I'm making a course tracker app. People are signing up for courses and training, right? I have many courses and many people. And
Yep.
then in the middle there, I need a way to relate all of the courses that people have joined, right? So the concept is this is a many to many relationship. Many people can join many courses and vice versa. And I do a lot of those, right? It's a pretty common data pattern. But one tip that I would give is if you're working with Dataverse, where you have the option of using the many to many connection or relationship, I always like to manually build a many to many table in the middle. Okay. And why would I want to do that? You have people on one side and you have courses on the other, right? And they're all joining these courses. But what if you want to add some information about how they did in that course, like their grade? Did they pass or fail? If you use the Dataverse out of the many to many relationship out of the box, you're not allowed to add that extra information in the relationship. But if you do build your own table in the middle to act as the many to many, you could put information about the results of them joining the course. Did they complete it? Did they pass it? What's their grade? And so on and so forth.
Yeah. That's I agree 100% with you. I was wondering if you were going to say to use the proper Dataverse thing or just build your own middle table, because that's also what we recommend is the build your own mapping table between the two. 'Cause it just gives you more visibility and more control. So I'm glad to hear that you and I are actually on the same page for that one.
I think what I'm learning today, Shane, is we actually agree about a lot of things. This is becoming a little bit of a loving.
I know this is kind of boring. All right, so then let's do the hard one. Cats versus dogs,
Oh
right?
my gosh, I knew you were going to bring this up.
I mean, it's just dumb luck, right? Like you staked your whole thing on cats, I staked my whole thing on dogs. Like it's just it was meant to be. Like so I guess I'll let you go first. Like how did you end up making all your stuff about cats? Like what drives that?
Yeah, so when I started my blog, I didn't want to have a bunch of boring business pictures at the top of my blog like everybody else.
Right?
But I figured that I could find pictures of cats for just about anything. I mean, the internet, Google image search, it's all just basically based on cats, right? And so I started putting these pictures in my site, and my daughter got a hold of my phone. And when she looked at the phone, she's like 5. Now, she doesn't know anything about Power Apps. She sees the cats, she's scrolling up, she's scrolling down, she's staying on the page there looking at stuff. And I'm like, man, this is a great idea. Because if people don't come for the Power Apps, they're going to at least come for the cats and click on the cat just to see the article. So, little, I guess that's a little bit of a cynical player idea there, but also very cute, right? And I've had a cat for years. His name is Tiggy Tiggerson, and maybe he'll make an appearance on the call later.
That would be crazy if Tiggy Tiggerson shows up. Yeah, right. And for me, it was kind of the same thing when I started making the YouTube videos. It was like I need a demo user, and so my first inclination was use my kids, but YouTube really frowns on kids. So I was like, all right, well, this big fat dog is over here staring at me. And so thus it was born, right? That Chewy became the mascot for all things Power Apps 911. And yeah, that's like you, right? Like it wasn't like this master genius thing, but it turns out that a lot of people are like, we need more Chewy, or nowadays it's Buddy, right? We need more Buddy pictures, and it's yeah, because they like the animals more than they like us, I think.
Now, there are some things I like about cats other than the fact that they just, drive more attention to the blog and that type of thing. I love the fact that I love watching cats run around and play with each other. I love watching like all their acrobatics, like jumping off from the floor, like climbing up their little trees and stuff like that. Like they're so cute. I also love the fact that you can go on vacation and leave them in your house and not have to take them with you. And they're not like they're an easy pet to like go away for a little while and let someone watch. Whereas a dog, you kind of have to take a dog with you. Also, cats don't bark. They just scratch at your door at 4 o'clock in the morning and want to jump on your chest and wake you up, which is probably what happened this weekend. That's why I love cats.
the barking thing, it's a real problem. Buddy hopped up. Literally thought he was about to bark on command when you said that. All right, so back on Power Apps topics. So, what's a feature that you wish was in the product that's not there? I see you like to tweet about these from time to time to rile up the audience. So, what's a feature you'd love to see?
Oh man. Yeah. And I hope that the product team is listening because I got kind of a laundry list on this topic. I
Okay,
got
you only get 30 minutes here. You got don't go ahead. What do you got?
but you and I, Shane, like we use this product like every single day. So like we really love Power Apps, but because we use it so often, we just see all these things that we really, really want. And so I think the first and the biggest thing that I would want from Power Apps is give me a way to define a custom theme. Wouldn't that be great, right? I do not like to click on each individual control and say this one should be blue and this one should be purple and this should have a Sego UI font. There should be a way where I can globally set the theme by picking a few colors. And then if I would like to deviate from that theme, I would like to override it inside the control, right? By writing something. I think that that would just be the bee's knees.
Yeah, well, and it was funny. There was several comments in the chat already about it before you brought it up. Themes has definitely always been a hot button issue, right? I mean, it's been a hot button issue for 5 years now. We've wanted it.
Yep.
I don't
What you?
think I'm saying anything out of turn here. With modern controls, right? So the new experimental modern controls, which you shouldn't be using yet because they're not ready to be used. Let's be honest. Shh. They are kind of the path towards themes, right? Like if you look at those controls, they've kind of already got some theming hooks laid into them. So you can kind of see that they are the pathway to themes, right? I feel like they kind of got to get those going to get themes. And a new theme shipped about 2 weeks ago, right? That new light blue theme.
It did.
It doesn't do anything special, but I'm totally with you. Right? I think themes would be a landmark type of thing. And I think they've heard us. I think we're going to get them. It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah.
Someone else I see there, they said in that same vein, like custom formulas. We know that like named formulas and that type of stuff, components now have some more formula capabilities. They've got those new low code Dataverse plugins that have some formula like stuff. So yeah, I think better formula reuse is definitely, I think, coming.
What's top of mind for you, Shane? Like, what are you doing every day that you wish you didn't have to do, or you think it'd be a better experience for folks?
I'm still really, I think branding overall, I think you're totally right. Like just making that easier, right? One of the product team, I won't say his name because I'm not sure he's comfortable with it, right? But he's like, he said it out loud to me one time. He's like, they make it really easy to make an ugly app. I'm just trying to change that to make it so they make it really easy to make a pretty app, which is what they're working on. I think so. Overall, that type of stuff is definitely there. But the other big thing I would like to see, this sounds really dumb, but it still kind of offends me that like uploading a file inside of SharePoint or inside of Power Apps is still really hard, right? Like, I mean, it's not because we've done it 1,000 times, but like when some genius on the internet invented that method years ago, like the product team just has never embraced like, hey, we should give these people an upload control that just you drop an upload control on here, you add a file, it's hooked into a templated flow that sucks it in. Like files should not be so hard to work with because almost every Power App wants to work with Power files in some capacity.
Yeah, and that attachment control, it's kind of hidden too, right?
You have to steal it, yeah.
Where you have to create a form to go get it and then extract it from the form and then delete that form. Why can't it just be on the insert button that they're like the rest of the controls? I think that, we're all smart folks here and we're not going to get too tripped up by having that in that spot. So
and it was there when it first rolled out and they took it off the menu.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they must have got some feedback or something like that.
For like a week, not for a week, for a couple months, it was there when it first shipped, and then they got sucked out.
Kind of on this topic, one of the viewers had a question. It says, "I'd love to get some more info on how to set up and use document libraries as an advanced topic. Where can I find that?"
Using the document library. So, I mean, I have a video on it. I don't know if you've done a blog post on document libraries as well. Have you got one?
Just uploading to document libraries, but not the setup of them themselves.
Yeah, so I made a whole video. If you go look, it's called like Document Library Explorer. And so I basically built a file explorer app that like lets you browse, search, filter, drill into folders, like work with all the pieces, delete, add files. So there is a video out there on that. Whoever asked.
Now, I got a question for you here, Shane. I'm really curious to hear this one. Responsive apps have been around for a while now, responsive Canvas apps. And for the viewers at home there, responsive apps allow you to use one app for many screen sizes, whether it's a tablet or a phone or a really big ultra wide screen that I'm looking at right now. You can use the same Power App in it and it's going to look great. But you have to do a little bit of extra coding in order to make that happen. So Shane Young, when you are making a Power App right now, Canvas app, do you default to responsive? Do you always make your Power Apps responsive or do you do something else?
Oh, another little spicy question. I like that. So I'll be honest, I do not. I do not believe in responsive apps, right? And the reason is that, like, because a lot of times we talk to people, it's like, hey, I want this for like 90%, and like two people want it to be, on this other form factor, like make it responsive. I'm like, great, but it's going to at least double your quote, if not 2.5 times it, right?
Mhm.
And so in a lot of cases, it's like, hey, it would actually be cheaper for you to have us build a desktop version of this app and a mobile version of this app and maintain both code bases than making
Mhm.
one responsive app that magically works on any device.
Now, here's the question for you, and this is not a gotcha. That's how you know it's a gotcha when I tell you it's not a gotcha question, right? Now, is a responsive app the same as making an app for desktop and an app for mobile, right? Can we disentangle those two things, right? Or is responsive is that what responsive means, or is it, you know, do we create those two apps separately? Like,
Yeah, so I think responsive, I think this is part of the challenge, right?
yeah.
Responsive means something different to everyone. So I think this is kind of your bigger point, right? Because if for practical sake, if you said, "Hey, build me an app that worked the same on or worked on a desktop at 1920 by 1080 and
Mhm.
worked on a iPhone 13 Pro only in landscape mode," right? Like, you gave me
Right.
two very specific criteria. We can probably do that, and we can probably make a responsive app that solves both of those in a decent amount of
Yeah.
level of effort.
Yeah.
Where people get in so much trouble is they're like, I want it to work on everything, right? So it should be able to work on my PC, my laptop, my tablet, both horizontal and vertical, right? My phone and all these different formats. We got Samsungs, we got
Mhm.
iPhones. Like, we want any device. That is where you just better get your checkbook out, right? You've probably 10x your quote at that point, because every one of those scenarios, right? Like the stupid Samsungs, they have like this, they're like slightly different than all the iPhones and all the other Androids, right? So you got to like go account for them a little bit different and it's just an unwinnable game. So if
No, yeah.
you give me specific targets, maybe, but if it's just anywhere, you ain't got that much money.
And to build on what you said, I think the hardest thing about designing for multiple form factors, cutting the responsive part out of it, is that you use these devices in different ways. If I'm using my phone, I'm tapping around with my thumb. I want the menus to be at the bottom. I want a tap bar, right? I want my little add button to be close to there. If I'm using my PC or my laptop, I want all my menu buttons oriented to the top or the side because that's where my eyes are used to looking at. And the mouse can go anywhere on the screen, that type of thing. And so I think that that's something that gets people tripped up when they say, like, are we going to design responsive or not? Sometimes the question is actually like, are we going to design for more different types of devices rather than just different screen sizes? Because maybe if we were just designing for laptop and that was the one use case, then maybe doing a responsive app is okay because you don't got to program for all those other things in the middle. So just food for thought, things to consider.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's important to understand, right? Is because you're bringing up like one of my favorite ones, right? Like, is don't build one app to rule them all, right? Like making one app that works in all scenarios for all users for all the processes. You can do that, but then you're going to have to do just like our dear US government does, right? You're going to have to make everything to the lowest common denominator. Right? No one's going to have a good experience, so everyone can have
Yeah.
a mediocre experience.
I wouldn't
But if
know. I
you
have
say,
a Canadian government.
yeah, right? But if you say, hey, we're going to build a timesheet system, right? So we know that like doing time is always going to happen on mobile phones by the employees in the field. So let's build an experience tailored to them on a mobile phone that just does that. Then we know that approving time happens
Mhm.
by the supervisor sitting at a desk on a desktop PC, right? So let's build them an app, talks all the same data, but build them their own app that is optimized for their working experience, right? Like little design things like that to your idea there, right? Makes a giant difference because the guy or girl out in the field using their thumb on their phone doesn't need to skip over all the buttons for approving time that they can't click anyway, right? So why do we have all those buttons in their app taking up space for their poor little finger? Don't make generic apps. Make targeted, specific apps.
Speaking of poor little fingers, my thumb is actually pretty big. Something that the audience might not appreciate because we're only seen from the torso up. We're both pretty tall guys, Shane, right?
Yeah, that is one of the crazy facts. Right? I'm 6'4". I've always thought of myself being the tall guy, and then this dude walks in the room, and he's like what 6'8".
No, I'm 6'6", but when I put together the Power Apps basketball team, right, challenging all takers at the Power Platform Conference this year. Just kidding. Shane is going to be the first guy I call, along with Mr. Todd Baginski there, because we got the dream team in terms of height.
We got a couple mutants. Have you ever met Brian Dang in person?
I had a Brian Dang sighting. I did not know him at that time. It would not have been appropriate to say hello, but I did see him. Yes.
Right. He's the opposite end of the spectrum of us, right?
Yeah.
He's he's a lot shorter than us, so we're not putting him on the team.
He could be point guard, I guess. But
um,
all jokes aside, I would have really loved to have met and talked to Brian Dang. He just seems like a wonderful guy, and he was here before all of us, almost, right? I don't. Maybe he was here around the same time as you, Shane, but he's just a wizard at this stuff. I admire him.
Crazy fact, he's actually stood in this very spot. He's been in my house once.
No way. Is he
He
from Cincinnati or somewhere
No,
else?
he was in town for something, and he's like, "Hey, I want to catch up." I was like, "Come on over." And yeah, he stood right here. And I can tell you that when he stood right here, that's what you saw.
That's
Uh,
hilarious. Oh my god. So you're saying I'd be right at home if I came over to the young household?
Come on over, buddy. We'll hang out with you. No big deal.
It's funny when I picked my house out, the one thing I had to do was walk around in the basement to make sure I didn't hit my head on any ceiling doors. Yeah.
So one other thought I wanted to add to talking about responsive apps. So, you know, while I'm pretty anti-responsive apps, someone did mention containers in the chat, and I can
Ooh.
tell you all that I am absolutely using containers all the time for non-responsive scenarios. Right? They're just great controls for formatting and making your apps look better, and laying out things and stuff like that. So I don't know. What about you? Containers?
I love containers. Containers are like better groups. And the one question folks keep on asking me is, hey, we got vertical containers. I know what that is. Positions things top to bottom. I know what horizontal containers are, position things left to right. Why do we have this thing just called a container? Why does that thing exist?
Because that one, it doesn't control where things go. So you can still set the X and the Y properties.
Yeah.
So I will sometimes use that, when in my bad design skills, I don't want to have balanced stuff. I want to be able to scatter things around, but still keep them contained. I also sometimes use it for like space or placeholders. Like if I'm trying to create dead space, I
Right.
find it very nice for that
Right.
as well. But yeah, the non laid out containers are a little bit different, but mostly the same.
The one thing that's really nice about them is you can place things on top of each other. You can place a button on top of a menu or background with like more things on top of it. So it allows you to float things. So I find myself putting that generic container in there first, putting a nice menu backdrop around it, and then putting a vertical container or horizontal container inside of it to keep all my buttons over top of a really nice looking menu. And then when you want to show and hide stuff, you just hide the container, and it's so much easier than hiding every button in the darn app.
Yes, you are exactly right. I know we're running.
Oh, No, I just saw another viewer question there. I was going to get your take on there, and we've been talking a lot about this lately. But what are your thoughts on the new Copilot features we've been seeing in Power Apps? Copilot, what's that?
I am all in on Copilot.
All in.
Right. So yeah, I'm sure you all have seen it at this point. You jump in the homepage, you can be like, hey, make me an app that makes my dog quit whining when I'm on a YouTube video, right? But and then it'll build me out some columns and build the app. Or the import from Excel uses Copilot to analyze your data and kind of make up an app. And I think that they're just scratching the surface.
Yes.
I mean, I realize when you look at the Copilot features, if you're a seasoned maker, you're like, I don't need any of that. That's fair, but your non-seasoned makers do. And I think it's also just paving the way to what we're going to see next. And so as part of my quest to always have my 10,000 hours in on the topic, I'm using the Copilot features today, even though I don't really need them, just so I can start to build those muscles around what does it do, how does it behave, all of that type of stuff.
I like what you said there, Shane. We do need to step out of our own shoes sometimes as like pro season makers who are doing this 40 hours a week or more in some cases. And think about the folks who are just getting started. Absolutely love that import from Excel feature, right? Where you're taking an Excel file and placing it into Power Apps and then starting to get a table out of it, or asking GPT to create you some sample data in there. That's great for mockups and proof of concepts as an architect. Like I need that stuff all the time. Now I just don't need to go another place for it. And now that we've got AI in place for uses when we're just starting to build our apps, like where I would love to see it go next is to see like Copilot help me with the things after that, right? How can you help me build my app, right? How can you do documentation for the app? Like I've come up with a GPT prompt to help me document things, right, inside of an app or a solution. Like that type of stuff. How do we just move it further down the line? Are there any Chat GPT queries that you found particularly useful for building Power Apps, or that you kind of come back to?
The thing that the HTML stuff is because creating PDFs, right, and generating the HTML for that or for email bodies,
Yes.
like that's one of the skills that I find that everyone struggles with unless you did it in the 90s, like some of us older people. And so I find that that's probably one of the fastest ones that people can get benefit from. Like, hey, here's,
Mm.
make an HTML table that does blah. Or worse yet, those of you that are troubleshooting, right? Like drop your HTML in there and say, hey, find the bug. And it can be like, oh yeah, you forgot to close this, table tag here. So that has been one of my best uses of it at this point.
One of the ones I started reusing was when you submit a form, maybe a patch form that you built yourself, you need to write all these data validation conditions up front to make sure that person's age is not less than 0, the date is not earlier than today, and all sorts of other things. I've actually found ChatGPT is pretty great if you write out those things in plain language. It'll come up with some nice Power Apps code where it can actually check against the columns or variable names in your app. You might need to do a couple of edits, but if you're not sure how to put that together in the first place, like it's a pretty easily reusable pattern. I really like that one.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing I think about this, right? This is one of my slide soapboxes. But if those of you that are sitting here watching right now, if you're not using Chat GPT like every day of your life, you're doing it wrong, right? Like you have got to be embracing this thing. And I saw someone in chat already say, well, hey, it can only do things back to 2021. Well, if you spend the $20 a month and get Chat GPT 4, right, then you can do the Bing plugin to get the internet. You can do that, right? The plugins are interesting. Chat GPT is not going away. It is not a flash in the fan. It is not a fad.
No.
So anyone that is not using that stuff and finding ways to integrate it into their work today, you're just doing yourself a disservice.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we are at 5 minutes past the top of the hour. Any closing thoughts you'd like to share with these lovely people before we call it a day?
Yeah. There's another question that folks ask me all the time. I just hadn't had a chance to address. And it's about, hey, I really love this Power Apps, this Power Automate thing. Like, how can I do more of it? Whether it's in my own company or like going somewhere else to do it right, doing it full time, kind of hanging out my own shingle, and like, how do I become a pro Power Apps developer? Whatever that means. I still think that's kind of a funny thing because 5 years ago that wasn't like a real thing. And I think that the best thing that you can do if you want to break into this space is start to build your portfolio, right? We all know what a resume is, it lists all your accomplishments, yada yada. Put together an actual group of apps or flows or stuff that you've designed, hopefully deployed to the real world. Like show, don't tell. If you can do demos with them, like that's great. But and try to tell real world stories about how the solutions you made like in your personal life or at your company like actually improve things, whether it's helping like save money or time or stuff like that. And I think that that's a really big way to indicate to like your organization or other prospective employers like and what type of value you can bring it and what you can do. And so when you're thinking of if you want to go pro and become a Power Apps developer, I always say portfolio, 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 right? That's show me what you can do.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I have an outline for video that does this exact topic. I think
Really?
it is a very common question. So
That's
cool.
awesome.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate you hopping on here. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the chaos, but I mean we've got about 10,000 questions over there. So clearly we did not answer even 1% of them, but still fun chat.
Real fun. Just want to say thanks to everybody who joined today. This is absolutely amazing.
Cool. All right.
And thanks to
Well,
you for having me on, Shane.
whoever I am, right? Well, all right, everyone. Well, thank you and have a great day.